What's good, homies? Welcome back to the Drafts and Draughts podcast. I'm Joe, aka Sultan. No Dave yet again. I'm not sure if he's ever coming back. The dude had all of his fantasy seasons come to an end. He's down in the dumps right now, and I know he doesn't want to talk fantasy, and I don't blame him. It's a little bit of a burnout period. This season can't end soon enough for him. But it's Sunday, December 22nd. It's Christmas week. I got my Christmas sweater on, the baseball swag Grinch shirt. Let me show you. We got the Craig Kimbrell dressed as Santa Claus clip art pose and doing his patented arm bar closer peer-in stance. But instead of holding a baseball, he's holding a bag of presents. Really cool design. One of our most popular selling sweaters ever. But more importantly, it's week 16, baby. It's already 12:30, so I'm going to try to keep this episode short, but it's semifinals week. Most of you guys are probably still playing. If you're listening right now, you probably still have a team in the hunt, but this episode is geared more towards, taking you guys through the 2024 season in general, some of the takeaways, and talk about what they might mean for the landscape of fantasy as we go forward, how it might impact the 2025 season. And this should lay the groundwork for our superlatives episode, which will be next week, where we start handing out, fantasy MVPs and rookies of the year and whatnot. Before we get into the pod, I want to shout out some of our most loyal listeners of the pod. As far as I know, those of you who either comment, like the pod, or, let me know your favorite parts of the episode or things you agree or disagree with. Either way, I just like knowing that you guys are listening. So, Dave, when you're not here with me on the show, I appreciate that you're always tuning in and trying to do your best to shelter the kids from the swear words. I'm doing my best out here. PME Warrior, aka Dan, in a couple leagues, the most loyal listener, always tuning in as soon as it comes out. I love that. Eric Simonson, new friend of a couple of my leagues, but making his mark across them already. Unfortunately, got bounced in our Dynasty League, but he's still alive in our Redraft League, so kudos to him. We got Bowman Gilday. Both of them are in the semifinals of multiple leagues that I'm in with them. Two of the better players I play with, and they try to tune in as much as possible, even though they make fun of me for articulating stats, but I think it's important. So we got Zach Helyar, a friend I met last year through a coworker. He's always listening in and, offering some good insight to the pod. We got the Angry Beavers of Pocho with Sal Scap and Kelman, Max Goldfarb. I know you tune in, Wex, King Snake, Sujin, all you guys. I appreciate all of you who take time to listen. Now, that was a mouthful. 3 minutes in, let's get to a draft review. Wasn't gonna drink a beer today, but it's semifinals week. I gotta listen in. Before we get to that, I don't have a Christmas hat. I do have this little Christmas Santa guy with me, so he's a little golf buddy. Really cool little knickknack. I usually don't like knickknacks, but this one I'll keep. And I don't have a Christmas hat, so I'm gonna go with this matching Gatorade cap to go with my Christmas sweater. But yes, on to the draft review. We have, which I might have reviewed this before, but in light of the news that this brewery is closing, which is right next to my place, I felt like it's only fitting that I give them a review. This is my favorite beer they make. It's called the Redemption Rock Warcastle New England IPA. I love this seafoam green can with the Warcastle emblem with like a little stone castle above it, a couple little animals on the side, the heart there to designate the heart of Central Mass, which is Worcester. So let's give it a live crack. So good. Again, so it's really sad to see that this place is coming to an end because I love this beer, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. One of the better New England IPAs I've ever had, and it makes me happy to have this one. I got a 4-pack in my fridge right now. I might go stock up because I think they close on the 29th, but skipping the OTQ today because I forgot to prepare one. So let's just jump right into the season themes. Going by positional group, let's talk about quarterback play. I think the big thing here for me is that, and I don't have a bunch of stats in front of me, so I'm going to go off purely vibes for most of this. I do have a couple stats for each position, but I just want to go off vibes. Just go off gut general feel. And to me, QB feels like it was a bad year and I'm guilty of it, to skip out on elite QB and think you could get elite QB production late unless you got Jaden Daniels, you were disappointed. You thought maybe Kyler Murray could be that guy. I thought I might get Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert in a bunch of places, and they might both be elite. You thought Jared Goff and Brock Purdy could give you some elite production. If you took a chance on rookie quarterbacks, unless you got Jaden Daniels, Caleb hasn't helped. The only really late quarterbacks that have helped is Daniels and Burrow. But you really should have been smashing your Hurts, Lamar, and Josh Allen QBs because those guys have just absolutely paved the way for these fantasy. In all my leagues, almost every single Josh Allen team is still alive. Every single Lamar team is still alive. All the Hurts teams are still alive. Those are the guys that are getting you there. And so I think going into next year, you're going to see people really push up those elite QBs. I think you're going to start seeing guys like Allen and Lamar potentially going in as early as the second round, even in managed leagues. And I think alternatively, you're going to see the rookie quarterbacks really take a hit this year because rookies and sophomore quarterbacks, unless they have hit, they aren't progressing at the rate that we expected. Like Stroud took a step back. Bryce Young hasn't done much. Anthony Richardson's taken a step back. And I think you're seeing that in that note, rookie quarterback development is getting worse. I think it's a microcosm of the college program. Like there's a big clip of Tom Brady going around where he's talking about colleges no longer have quarterback programs. They're just simplifying playbooks and trying to get productive teams on the field as soon as possible rather than letting players develop and creating programs for those players and designing entire playbooks around those players' skill sets and letting those players evolve. It's just, okay, create the most low calorie playbook out there and just try to move the ball as simple as possible rather than creating and developing quarterbacks and giving them the ability to start making reads, pre-snap reads, making adjustments at the line, going through progressions. It's a lot of design touches, designed routes, first read and go. Just QB development in general. I think the NFL is also seeing that there's a lot of pressure to be successful right away. And you're seeing a lot of rookie quarterbacks thrown to the fire. You're seeing Richardson thrown out there when he has no business being a starter, given how much time he has played in college. Same with Trey Lance last year was not ready. You're seeing like guys like Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, Will Levis, Bryce Young, even to some extent Trevor Lawrence. The expectation for these rookie quarterbacks is so high. Look at Caleb. He's not bad, but he hasn't been outstanding. Mac Jones was actually kind of solid his rookie year, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot of impatience with rookie quarterbacks, and they're not being given an opportunity to develop. Like even Drake May got 6 games behind Jacoby Brissett before he was thrown in. Michael Penix was given 14 games. I'm actually looking forward to paying attention to the way Penix plays down the stretch because he's a good example of sitting behind a starter for a little while, an experienced starter. And something you're starting to see is that does experience matter like a lot more in college than tools and skills? Because I know it's a small sample size, but Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels have looked really good at the NFL level, and they are notorious for having played 5 or 6 seasons in college and have spent at least 2 or 3 years as a starter for multiple programs. Whereas the Anthony Richardson types and the Trey Lance types are struggling. Paying attention to Penix down the stretch here will be important for me because he's a good example of both. He sat behind a quarterback at the NFL level while also having played a lot in college and has a lot of experience. I think that could be the recipe going forward. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, but I'm excited to see it. I really want to see better development. And going into this year's draft, you're going to have guys who are multi-year starters coming out, like Cam Ward, who went to, I think he was at Washington State and then Miami. And so he's got a chance. He had Shedeur Sanders, who has a second full year as a starter. two quarterbacks at least. I know Quinn Ewers has had multiple years as a starter at Texas. Jackson Dart's been a couple year starter at the Ole Miss. I don't know exactly every single QB prospect, but one thing that I feel like I've learned from this season in general is that mediocrity for fantasy philosophy absolutely killed teams. If you ended up with a guy like Mahomes or Laporta, it kind of actually impacted tight ends too. I think that's the hardest part about the one-off positions, because you think you're set at quarterback with Mahomes, so you never took the chance to go find the Sam Darnold early in the season, because you're like, what do I need Darnold for? I have Mahomes. You never went and go grabbed. I know Daniels wasn't a free agent, but you never went after a second quarterback later in the draft that could have popped for you. You never went and picked up Bo Nix, who could have been a fantasy winner for you for in the mid-season stretch, because you felt like I have Mahomes. What do I need to add another quarterback for? Same goes, and we'll talk about it later, but same goes for Laporta teams. Laporta killed teams not purely because of how he played, but because of how you were forced to roster construct around Laporta. You never went and took a stab at Zach Ertz or Jonnu Smith or you name it, whatever the next kind of out of nowhere tight end is that came up this season, Cade Otton off waivers. You never even looked at it when you went to go do your weekly waivers, because you're like, well, I have Laporta and I'm not going to carry two tight ends and I'm not going to drop Laporta. So for 6 to 8 weeks, you were stuck throwing up mediocre, middling results. And I think it's going to make me want to go studs or duds next year at those positions, meaning I'm either going to get Lamar or Josh Allen, or I'm just going to literally scrape the waivers for QB all season, because I'm not going to carry CJ Stroud all year and roll him out there for 16 points a game and say, well, I can't bench Stroud and I don't want to carry two quarterbacks, so I'm not going to even look at who's on waivers, because that would have killed you this year. And I'm going to guess in a lot of best ball leagues, there's not many Mahomes and Stroud teams that have advanced on underdog. I'm going to guess that many managed leagues, in Dynasty, I guess maybe there's a chance you probably had a guy like Goff you could have started subbing in for Mahomes or for Stroud. But yeah, redraft leagues got killed by mediocrity this year. But yeah, let's move on to running backs. I think this was a year where we say, what age cliff? What happened? Remember the age cliff? Do you guys remember that thing? The daunted age cliff that people used to talk about? Because the top 5 running backs this year are basically all 27 years old or older. You got Saquon smashing. You got Derrick Henry smashing. You got Joe Mixon smashing. You have, I know Bijan and Gibbs are doing well too, and Achane, but you have a bunch of old heads who are all smashing. James Conner is smashing. Those are the guys this year. And I think, is this because players are healthier? Is science getting better, or is player care getting better, or is this just luck? I think this is a phenomenon I'm going to be fading going to 2025. I'm not going to be considering, well, the age cliff is actually getting longer, so now I'm going to start investing in, I'm going to go get Aaron Jones this year, or I'm going to go consider Saquon the 101. I don't think Saquon should be going 101 next year. As good as he has been, and I know it's going to be discussion, is he's going to be 28, and 28-year-olds get hurt. Joe Mixon, I'm not taking him in the first 2 rounds next year. I don't care how good he's been. Same with Derrick Henry. I'm not touching a 30-year-old, 32-year-old running back next year. That's my personal philosophy. But has the philosophy shifted in the NFL based on the success of running backs, especially teams that signed with new teams? A lot of those same older players that are doing well also all happen to be on new teams this year. A list of players that are smashing that join new teams are the aforementioned Saquon, Mixon, and Henry, but also Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Jones are also all doing great, and they're all on new teams, and they're all older than 25 or 26. I think Pollard might be the youngest in the list at 27. I think maybe he's 26. Saquon's 27, so he might be the youngest. But will this year lead the NFL to start shifting their philosophy? I thought this was going to happen last year a little bit when you start to see the shift in wide receiver rooms go from big, tall alphas like your Michael Thomas types and Julio Jones and DeAndre Hopkins and all these big 6'3", 6'4", AJ Green go up and get the ball and beat your man in one-on-one and win in contested catch situations and be able to weather a huge hit from a safety and hold on to the ball. That's the old archetype of successful receiver. And you're starting to see all these smaller sleight of frame guys come into the NFL and have either great success or marginal success, like your Devontae Smith or your Tank Dell, which rest in peace, my God, what a fucking hit he took. But like, even like Justin Jefferson isn't that big of a dude. Jamar Chase isn't that big of a dude. Like, these are 6 feet, 200-pound guys. Garrett Wilson's a slight a frame guy. CeeDee Lamb's, he's a little bit 6'2", 215. Like, he's probably the biggest one on the list. And I could be wrong on that, but like Mike Evans is a dinosaur at this point. Like that, not saying he's old. I'm saying that that archetype of receiver, it doesn't seem to be the one thriving. So I thought you would see, as teams started to adjust and bring in smaller defensive packages with smaller, faster linebackers and quicker safeties, you would see teams start leaning back into the bruising running back style. I thought Zach Charbonnet was going to be the first one to be the point of that spear of running back. And maybe it's taken a few more years for teams to catch up, that stickiness of this shift in the NFL meta. I think you're going to start seeing it potentially as soon as next year, especially with such a loaded 2025 running back class, that teams may think they need to really juice that running game. And unfortunately, I think the hard part is I think you're seeing basically most every successful team has some sort of committee. The only teams that don't are actually a bunch of teams I mentioned with Saquon, Henry, and Jacobs. I think are the only 3 real. I guess Chase Brown's kind of in a bell cow role. I guess Joe Mixon's in a bell cow role. Same with Aaron Jones. I wonder if teams are going to go back to that. And I'm changing my thought process on the fly right here. All of those teams are playoff teams near the top of their division. Like, who can you name at the top of the NFL has a committee backfield besides the Lions? The Packers, no. The Vikings, no. The Eagles have a bell cow. The Commanders, I guess, have a little bit of a committee. The Steelers have a committee. The Bills, they don't really have any running back game. It's basically just Josh Allen. But so I pulled together a chart, and I don't have the labels on it because I pulled this together. This is the only thing I did. But I wanted to look at the EPA per rush attempt, expected points added per rush versus expected points added by per pass attempt by team in the NFL. And I thought it looks a lot different than I expected. So here's the graph, and let me zoom in a little bit. Fill the page. And you'll notice the x-axis across the screen is the EPA, expected points added per pass attempt. And the EPA per rush attempt is the vertical axis. And there's only 4 teams above 0 expected points added per rush attempt. And that is the Eagles, Bills, Commanders, and Ravens are the only 4 teams that every time they rush the ball, according to this database I found, are adding points to their total by rush. Every other team is going negative. Every other team, it's actually hurtful for the success of their team to be rushing the ball. Whereas there are, how many teams is this? 21 teams that have a positive EPA per pass attempt. But the majority of the league is in this bottom right quadrant, which is a positive pass attempt, positive expected points added for passes and negative expected points added for rush attempts. And what this is telling me is that I think I guess a running game is important, but not as important as you might think, given if you looked at how good running backs have been this year. And I think the only reason running backs have been quote unquote good this year is because they're staying healthy. If we had to be depending on Rasheen Ali and Justice Hill and, Kenneth Gainwell in Philadelphia and, Damian Pierce in Houston, I think you'd see one, they'd be less successful. And two, they would be passing more because of that. And I think we'd start seeing, Nico's actually eating more. Zay Flowers is eating more. The Eagles receivers are eating more. And it's back to normalizes, which I think if you're like me, you felt like passing has been down this year in past games in general, but it really actually hasn't. I went through each of the last 5 seasons expecting to see the cutoff for top 24 receiver points per game and top 12 points per game be lower this year than ever. And that's just not true. The number of receivers that have scored over 17 points per game this year are around I think it's 6 or 7 right now. And that's in line with the last 5 years. I think the last 5 years have been like 8, 10, 6, 7. So it's like, it's not like have an aberration in terms of how many players are scoring less than ever. The cutoff for a top 24 wide receiver this year is like 13.7 points per game, which is exactly in line with each of the last 5 years, save for I think 2020, it was like 14.1 or something. So it's like, it's not like it's a crazy down year. I think the only thing that's really different is there's only one wide receiver over 20 points per game this year, which is Jamar Chase. And that's the first time that's happened since Michael Thomas in 2019 that we've only had one. Last year we had like 4 or 5 with Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Keenan Allen. And the year before, I think it was the Cooper Kupp year and the Devontae Adams year. I can't remember which year is what, but it's the only year where there's just no legendary receivers outside of Chase, which I think is also dragging down the perception of receivers. Because if you don't have Jamar Chase, which is only one team in every league, you feel like your receivers are all underperforming because you probably have at least one guy on every team or on half the league that feels like they should have a 20 plus point per game guy that doesn't. And I'm also going to be fading this going into next year, meaning I think wide receivers are going to bounce back. I think running backs health is going to not bounce back. So you won't catch me loading up on running back starts. I'm not going to have a robust running back strategy. I probably won't even go double hero ever. I think the most you're going to see me do is possibly a hero, like whichever of Saquon, Gibbs, Bijan, Breece Hall, Devon Achane falls to the second, if any of them. That's probably, at this rate, Breece Hall might not even be a second round pick the way people are talking about him, but I'll probably be the only occasion where I grab a running back in the second. I'll probably be looking at getting a guy like Nico, Puka, Neighbors at the end of the first and pairing them with one of those running backs in the early second. Remains to be seen what happens with rookie drafts and how the landscape shifts. But I just think that there's too many good receivers and the EPA speaks for itself. Teams are still more often than not generating more points added to their totals by passing the ball. And I think it's going to be foolish for NFL teams to get away from that entirely, even though this year lends itself for you guys to think maybe it's worthwhile. The last one I wanted to point out here was just tight ends still suck, man. I think I showed it last week. I think it was a cool chart. Let me see if I can get it open right now. Yeah, of course, Bowers is doing great. Kittle's doing great. McBride's doing awesome for not scoring any touchdowns. And they're still all scoring 15 to 16 points per game. I think Kittle's at like 16.2, Brock Bowers is at 15.1, and Trey McBride's at 15.0. And everybody else is between 9 and 13 points per game. I think the coolest graphic was tight ends are still a developmental position for the most part. Yes, of course, McBride's in year 3 and Bowers is in year 1. But when I pulled up this age versus production chart from the tight end efficiency pod, you'll see that of the top, again, I have a list here of the top 20 tight ends that were dynasty relevant to some extent on here. And look at this, the cutoff at tight end 12. Of the top 12, when I'm looking at points per game versus age, and keep in mind, this is a couple weeks ago, so these points per game are not updated, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, 8 of the top 12 are over the age of 28 years old. So hold your and look at how green this whole bottom half of the tight end list is. It just goes to show that tight ends take time. And for the most part, they end up aging like fine wine. And you have sometimes you got to wait and reap that reward later, or you're gonna have to pay the premium to get them during their prime. Like now is the time to be investing in the Isaiah Likeleys and the Noah Grays and the Theo Johnsons and the I guess Jake Ferguson, but like the Dalton Kincaids and even Pat Fryermuth and Kyle Pitts still and Sam Laporta still, because there's still so much time for them to hit their stride. They're all of those guys I just named are at least 3 years away from what seems to be the tight end prime, which is 28 to 32. So what does this mean for next year? Kind of what I alluded to with quarterbacks is I will be either going studs in the form of Bowers and McBride at the very early top of the draft, or I'm going to be punting tight end completely and trying to string together a team of Pat Fryermuth and Kyle Pitts and Cole Kmet and whoever those round 12, 13, 14 tight ends are going to be next year, and just throwing a couple of those guys at the end of my team and saying they're giving me marginally a little bit less production than the rest of the tight end group. I'm not going to invest in any. Obviously, the landscape could change next year. You're going to see K. Otton's a free agent. I think Jonnu Smith signed a multi-year deal with Miami, so he'll probably still be there. Is Kelsey going to retire? What's the quarterback situation look like in Cleveland? There's a lot that could change next year, and I'm going to have to wait and see. But if I don't get Bowers or McBride next year, I'll be punting tight end most likely until the later rounds and just play the waiver game. To me, that seems like the most effective. So, again, this was a really quick episode, 30 minutes. This has got to be 26 minutes. That's got to be a record for me. I know I'm a yapper. Hopefully, you're here because you love the yap. But as always, I'll see you guys next time. Maybe I'll get a couple episodes out this week since I got some time off. Hopefully, I'll be talking about my victories on Monday or Tuesday. Good luck to the McGiblets and the Orcas. Those are the two teams I'm facing in my home dynasty leagues, and I got a little bit of an edge right now. But as we all know, anything can happen this week. I got to go place a quick prop bet on Jaden Reed. But anyways, I'll catch you guys later. See you in the next one.